Today we're getting into the latest Tesla news, including potential future price cuts, rumors of further Cybertruck delays, Tesla's huge supercharger advantage, and more, so let's get into it. First up today, the Tesla Cybertruck has been heavily delayed over the past few years since Tesla announced it in 2019. It was a very classic Tesla announcement, announcing detailed specs and pricing that seemed nearly impossible but were very exciting. It was also a wild design that they said they'd be shipping in late 2021. Fast forward to late 2022, and the latest update from Elon Musk is that first production of the Cybertruck will begin in mid-2023. Delays have been seen largely due to global supply chain issues, but also likely the slower ramps of Giga Texas and 4680 battery cells. In any case, the machine to build the Cybertruck has begun shipping or potentially arriving at Giga Texas, and Tesla officially announced at their earnings call that they have begun tooling for the Cybertruck at Giga Texas. This is big because it goes beyond a time prediction. We're seeing the equipment to make the Cybertruck actually come into place. Now, however, a report from Reuters is saying that mass production won't begin until 2023. Quote, Tesla aims to start mass production of its Cybertruck at the end of 2023, 2 years after the initial target for the long-awaited pickup truck Chief Executive Elon Musk unveiled in 2019, two people with knowledge of the plans told Reuters. The article mentions Tesla saying they are set to start early production in mid-2023, and Elon talking about them being in the final lap for production, but many are interpreting this as a further Cybertruck delay. In reality, this is talking about, quote, a gradual ramp in the second half of next year to full output for the sharp-angled electric truck. Mass production won't occur until the end of next year because they'll spend mid-2023 through the end of the year ramping up from initial production. Ultimately, this makes sense, but a few things could delay the Cybertruck further, mainly that relate to batteries. Elon Musk has said that 4680 batteries are not expected to be any limiting factor for the Cybertruck or anything, but reports from sources have said that with the Cybertruck designed to use these, any further delays on 4680s could result in Cybertruck delays. Quote, Tesla may have to significantly redesign the Cybertruck batteries to switch to conventional 2170 batteries. I imagine that a backup plan for 2170s has likely been in place for some time, so it may not cause delays, especially after seeing reports of Cybertruck battery pack production beginning in Fremont, but anything could happen. We'll have to see, but for now, this report doesn't change much for Tesla's current Cybertruck production timeline. Next up today, the big question for Teslas is when will they come down in price? Ultimately, Tesla's goal is to make cheaper EVs, but currently they are priced high due to high material cost, demand, and Tesla's ability to charge more for their cars than other brands. Last week over in China, Tesla lowered their prices for the first time in a while, dropping the price of the Model 3 and Y in certain configurations up to 9%, and we've already seen the results of this price drop. Over in China, Tesla has much more EV competition than in the US, with many compelling Chinese electric brands, but as soon as Tesla dropped their prices, people started canceling their orders of other EVs. A Citi analyst checking with dealerships said, quote, we sense Tesla's recent price cut strategy has created a negative spillover effect where a lot of China EV brands' order backlog has suffered significant order cancellations, according to our dealership channel checks. The main brands people assume they are talking about here are NIO and XPeng. These are Tesla's main competitors over in China, but it appears that to a certain degree they are the alternate option to a Tesla. It's assumed that Tesla lowered their prices due to weakening demand in China, and that price drop immediately worked. This is huge for Tesla and shows just how valued their electric cars are for customers. Tesla has been at it with electric cars in general for a while and has incredible reliability with their Chinese-made vehicles, so once their pricing became a bit more reasonable, tons of people decided to cancel their orders, seemingly from NIO or XPeng, to get the car that they really want, a Tesla. What'll be interesting to see is if this effect makes its way to the US. Right now, Teslas are priced higher in the US than they are in China, but they still sell every car that they can make. Competition is coming in the US, but not at all on the same level it already is in China, at least not for some time. It may be some time in the US, but we do know that Tesla will do this, and can pretty much do it at any time. As GM, Ford, Hyundai, and more scale up their electric offerings, many worry that Tesla will lose their sales, but we could very well see what just happened in China happen in the US. Pretty much at any time, Tesla has the ability to undercut companies like GM entering the EV space. When they do so, many customers who went with another brand may realize that pricing is the main thing that drove them away from the product they actually wanted. Then Tesla gets those sales back, and they continue having an advantage in production cost, reliability, and more. Obviously, this won't apply to everyone. Ultimately, this is a big reason why I'm very excited for competition to finally arrive in the US. I want electric cars to be available to anyone who wants them, and right now, Tesla has no incentive to bring down prices. They are selling Model Ys constantly at $65,990. Why would they lower the price if people keep on buying them? Once competition actually scales and becomes available though, hopefully offering cheaper prices, that's the true time we should see price decreases from Tesla. I worry about how long that may take though. For now, I imagine the first price decreases Tesla would bring in the US would come as their factories continue scaling. As Giga Texas in particular starts getting to production numbers on par with Fremont, they will have much more supply available and could finally catch up to their demand on their $66,000 vehicles. At a certain point, even without competition, Tesla could be producing enough cars that they are able to charge less and sell to many more customers willing to buy a Model Y, but only for $5,000 cheaper than today's pricing. Tesla's scaling and Tesla's competition are all good news for consumers. Next up today, we frequently talk about Tesla's supercharger advantage. They have many supercharger locations with tons of stalls and continue growing every day, but another aspect of their chargers I didn't fully understand until now was reliability. Throughout the past couple years on road trips, I've used many Tesla superchargers. The worst experiences I've had were when there was a line on a busy holiday. This has happened on 2 occasions in total, waiting for 5 to 10 minutes for a stall, but I've never had reliability issues. The chargers just work, and work very quickly, usually up to 250 kilowatts. Recently, however, I purchased a Rivian R1T, so my wife and I decided to take it on a road trip up California to try out third-party charging. It was very stressful, and here's our experience. On the way up to Northern California, our trip wasn't too bad, but I immediately noticed the tension of third-party chargers. Our first stop was in Harris Ranch. There were 6 Electrify America stalls, and 4 of them were taken, so we pulled into the 5th stall. Immediately, the screen turned on to say, charger unavailable. Not the first thing you want to see the first time you ever charge a third-party charger. Luckily, there was another stall available, and this was a 150 kilowatt max stall. This is great, and we were at 20% charged, so we should easily be able to get these speeds in the R1T. However, the max charge we ever saw was 78 kilowatts. In a vehicle like the Rivian, with very low efficiency relative to other EVs, charging speeds capping at half of what they should be are a big problem. It took much longer to charge than it should have, but we managed to charge enough in about an hour to get to our next stop. The second stop was at Electrify America at a Walmart in Stockton. Here we pulled into a 350 kilowatt max stall, and this one was great. We saw lots of 205 kilowatt charging, and everything here was great, as it should always be. Then we went to EVgo near our destination to charge up for the weekend. This was in Vacaville, California at the Nut Tree. This charging system was confusing, so I ended up having to sign up for the app before I could charge properly. Once charging began after about 10 minutes of setup, we walked across the street and it just stopped charging for some reason. I still don't know why this happened, but we were far enough away that I didn't want to come back and attempt to fix it. The next day, to charge up what we couldn't the day before, I decided to try out Electrify America at the outlets in Vacaville. This had 8 stalls and 5 were taken when I got there. I pulled into the 6th stall, plugged in, and the system never registered that I was plugged in. It never moved past the plug-in to start screen, so I was unable to charge. I pulled into the 7th stall, and this one said, charger unavailable, of course. So my last attempt was the 8th stall. I plugged in, it attempted to connect, but never succeeded. So I went back to EVgo and just stayed there to monitor that it actually would keep charging. For some reason, this particular stall actually needed me to do an emergency reset in order for it to function. I got up to 100 kilowatt speeds there, which was the max, and it charged me up to where I needed to go in about an hour. One thing I noted here was that the 350 kilowatt stalls were taken by cars that max out at 50 kilowatts. The Rivian R1T can do up to 220 kilowatts currently, so it's a bit frustrating to be blocked by cars who could get their same charging speed at a slower 100 kilowatt stall where I was stuck. Who knows how the timing worked there though, and there's no rule for this. So there was frustration here, but none of it truly affected my trip. The first Electrify America stop with issues meant that we charged for extra time after I found an available stall, but the other broken chargers at the Vacaville outlets didn't affect my time too much. They didn't prevent me from getting where I needed to go. That happened once we headed home. On the way back from Vacaville, it was almost a total nightmare. Just to note, I wasn't recording on the way back because I was just basically dealing with this stressful situation, so a lot of these photos are not my own. We left with about 90% battery, and our first stop ended up being in Stockton. We added this ourselves. We needed some things from the store, so we decided we may as well stop and charge a bit. We were at 74%, so charging wasn't too fast, but we just thought we would get some extra juice while we shopped. This ended up being an incredibly smart decision since the next 2 stops were so awful. Our second stop was in Harris Ranch again. Based on my issues on the way up, I should have been smart enough to avoid this charger altogether, but options were pretty thin, and at least their charger worked at 78 kilowatts. Here we arrived at 20% charge, but this time 3 of the 6 chargers didn't work. 2 were taken, so we were stuck at a 150 kilowatt charger that was maxing at 50 kilowatts. It was a hard cutoff on screen, ramping up to 50 and just stopping. For us to make it home, this meant we would have to charge for 2 hours and 20 minutes. That is unacceptably long, so we decided to charge enough to make it to another Electrify America charger that hopefully would work. This was in Lost Hills and had 4 stalls. We arrived with 12% battery, and I pulled into a 350 kilowatt charger. I figured, of course, this would be faster than 50 kilowatts, but remarkably, it was worse. This stall maxed out at 35 kilowatts, literally 1/10 of the speed the sticker on the charger claims it can do. So I moved to the 4th stall, and this was even worse. It was a 150 kilowatt charger giving us 21 kilowatt speeds. By the time I realized it was even worse, the spot I left was taken, so I was stuck until someone else left. People likely weren't leaving anytime soon though, since the other R1T there was also maxing at 50 kilowatts. That meant he'd be there for probably 2 hours. I watched the charge steadily slow down, and eventually it was charging at 6 kilowatts. This is actually slower than my home charger, and it estimated it would take 1 day and 53 minutes to charge. Ultimately, we stayed there for about 45 minutes deciding what to do, and luckily charged enough from this trickle charger to make it to one last Electrify America stop. Unfortunately, no other networks were nearby on our way home. I drove extra slow, and we arrived at our hopefully final stop at 5% battery. The first stall I pulled into wouldn't read my card, so I couldn't get it to start, but I pulled into the 150 kilowatt stall, and miraculously it worked. I immediately saw it jump up to 150 kilowatt charging speed, so we charged for 30 minutes and drove home. If this charger had failed me, I would have had 14 miles of range to figure something out. Likely we would have trickle charged at a hotel and stayed the night. The craziest thing about this to me is that everything I just talked about, from arriving at my first real charging stop on the way down in Harris Ranch until the moment I found a working charger, was the fault of Electrify America's reliability. At least 2 to 3 hours were added to our trip just trying to find chargers that worked as advertised. And this is just what it is. There is not an alternate option in a non-Tesla EV. I didn't know it was this bad. I'm keenly aware of Tesla's advantage with superchargers. They just work, and there are locations everywhere, but I thought Electrify America did as well, at least somewhat. At many of the charging stops I had issues at, I saw supercharger stations with dozens of stalls there as well, and I know that all of those just work. Now, of course, this isn't the case for everybody. I know some people have had great success with third-party chargers, or just have learned how to navigate the ones that actually work. The experience I had is not the story for every single person driving an EV that isn't a Tesla, but that does not make it acceptable. This is likely the last road trip I'll be taking in our Rivian, which is a fantastic vehicle to road trip in. It's very comfortable, the cooling seats are awesome, ride is fantastic, and Driver Plus worked great on this trip, but charging was so stressful. Every single stop was a toss-up as to what issues I may have this time. On a Tesla road trip, you just charge. The only real question is what you're going to do when you charge. You choose which supercharger you want to go to based on the amenities near it because you know they will function. Here's a map of all the Tesla supercharger options I would have had on this same journey. This is one data point in one area of California, but the difference is huge in a state with people buying tons of EVs each quarter. Whichever supercharger you choose will be fine. Why wouldn't they? If they don't function, EVs literally can't travel. The thing that shocks me most about this is that this is kind of what it is for all non-Tesla EVs. There isn't a clear outline from any company on charging infrastructure expansion, so in reality, this probably will only get worse the more EVs are sold. Not only will issues be there, but more cars will be taking up spots and dealing with this stress. I'm very much an EV advocate overall and think they're the future of transportation, but let's just say, for example, I'm an average customer. I decide I want to make the jump to an EV, but I don't really want a Tesla. After 2 road trips like this, I would immediately tell my friends to avoid an EV, and I'd be looking for how to best sell the car. It's incredibly frustrating and hurts EV adoption as a whole. I didn't fully realize until now that the premium you pay to get a Tesla includes the significant privilege and advantage in the US of having superchargers. Eventually, Tesla has talked about opening their chargers to non-Teslas, but based on what I've seen here, I think they'll do this slowly and likely only be opening new stations to other EVs. Either way, Tesla may be the only company that actually fixes fast charging infrastructure for other EVs. It's definitely curious that Electrify America, created as a penalty for VW's diesel scam, has created a network of EV chargers so unreliable that many people see the cars themselves as completely useless. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but my experience here was so bad that I'm starting to wonder if Electrify America exists to provide a terrible experience and turn people off of EVs in general. Electrify America has announced a new charger design that should be much more reliable. Hopefully that helps fix these issues and makes it so road trips are as simple in any EV as they are in a Tesla. For now, Tesla's advantage advantage here has become even more clear to me. Their head start cannot be overstated. Last up today, some updates about other automakers. Fisker had their Q3 earnings call and announced plans for production of 42,400 Oceans in 2023. They are planning for 300 plus units in Q1, 8,000 plus in Q2, 15,000 plus in Q3, and the remainder of that goal in Q4. If all goes well, they should sell each of those cars as they have 62,000 total reservations. They plan to start deliveries in select global markets in January. They also gave updates on their second car, the Pair. They say they've signed off on the first concept phase and expect to have a drivable prototype ahead of schedule. They already have over 5,000 reservations. In early 2023, we could see the Fisker Ocean truly delivered, which would be great to see. Over at Lucid, they announced that they plan to debut the final 2 trims of the Lucid Air on November 15th. They also plan to give an update on their strategy and future models like their electric SUV. The Air Pure is their cheapest trim of the Lucid Air, which, quote, has a starting price of $87,400 and is distinguished by its metal roof and Mojave Pure Lux interior. Air Pure will initially launch with a dual-motor, all-wheel drive configuration. We'll get full details on the 15th. That's all the latest Tesla news for today, so in the meantime, if you want to check out Tesla's latest battery advantage, you can check that video out linked up here or in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.